delighted to welcome Sharon and Eleanor from Kingsclere Counselling Service here today with me to talk a bit about anxiety, relationships, and hopefully they can give you some tips about how to handle this difficult time. So to start with, I just wanted to ask you, Sharon, a lot of people are obviously feeling anxious. What's your advice to them?
Well, I think, Kate, that the first thing to think about is that actually anxiousness or anxiety is a perfectly normal response to the situation we find ourselves in. The fact that we're scared is because we are faced with a threat to the life that we've built and the way we know it. And I think actually the first thing is to forgive yourself for feeling anxious. It's all very much a case of, we don't know what's happening. That makes us nervous, and there's the threat of becoming ill ourselves, loved ones becoming ill, not being able to get the things we need, and actually a proportionate level of fear in response to that is normal and healthy and expected in this sort of scenario. When it gets to the point where you feel that you can't manage, then anxiety is a different beast altogether, and that's when it's really good to talk through your fears out loud. I would say that, obviously I'm a therapist, but even if it's to family members or friends or whatever, just saying, I'm really scared, this is bigger than I know how to deal with, is probably the first step in making that anxiety feel a bit more manageable.
On top of people being scared and things like that, you've also talked about that, it's time now that we're going to be spending at home, and actually maybe it could be put to good use. Obviously it's really hard to see sometimes, but can you maybe talk a little bit about the benefits that people can take advantage of during this period of self-isolation?
It feels overwhelming. We like to be in control of our surroundings, and we like to know what's happening when. We like routine and predictability, and this has thrown all out of the window. But actually, the moment when you can let go of the things you can't control, it gives you a sense of freedom and a bit of liberation. So it's a case of kind of dividing things into the things you can control, so your immediate surroundings, what's around you, what you're doing, and the things you can't. So the fact that we're in lockdown, how other people are responding to lockdown. You can only ever do anything about how you respond to the situation. And it's not easy, but being able to let go of the stuff that you can't control can free you up to be where you are. And I think it's very much a case of being now. So you get to be with your family, and you get to be in your home, and you get to be in the situation you're in without the distractions of normal life, and it's a case of being rather than trying to do everything, and we're not used to that in our society as it is at the moment, and actually that can be quite rewarding, and I'm not meaning to sound glib, because it is hard and there's a lot to worry about, but it can be a time to focus on the things that matter more to you, I guess.
Picking up on your point about being at home, with family, with partners, Eleanor, I just wanted to ask you, as a relationship counsellor, it is being much quoted that we could see a rise in the number of divorces as couples are forced to stay at home for a prolonged period. Would you agree? And, what do you think about that?
I feel it's a bit of make or break. I think that sometimes when big life circumstances happen, where people are really faced in a bit of their own mortality, or, just taking that sort of bigger world view, it can actually have the opposite effect. It can bring couples closer together. They can actually bond and share that feeling of anxiety and share that support for each other, and it can draw people closer together. Of course, that only really happens if people are talking to each other about their feelings and actually trying to connect with each other, trying to find ways to breach those anxieties together and sort of really share their own internal worlds with each other. And that can be really difficult if at the same time you are incredibly frustrated because you're both working from home, you've got the children around your feet, no one's unloading the dishwasher, you're just really kind of driving each other up the wall, and it can be really difficult to see any positive in spending that much time with your partner. But I actually don't think it has to be all doom and gloom. I think actually some really good positives can come out of it, and actually couples can learn to relate differently, to communicate differently, and to actually become closer over this period of time. That's what I would hope for.
What kind of advice would you give to not just couples, but maybe families as well? Is there good sort of tasks or little activities that you could do together that might help?
Firstly, I think arguments aren't a bad thing. At least arguments, people sometimes feel, oh, we're arguing all the time, we're bickering, and that can be exhausting. It can be really frustrating. But actually, if you're arguing about something, it means you're actually talking about it. It means actually, you're trying to communicate. Maybe it's not particularly effective, but you're at least trying to include each other in your sort of world and in your communication. The bigger problem is actually when sort of resentment builds up, when you stop talking to each other, where you actually kind of think, oh, I'm so frustrated all the time, and they don't even notice, and actually you're not, things are getting brushed under the carpet, and all the while that sort of mound in the carpet's getting bigger and bigger. So actually, arguments and bickering isn't really the problem. That's really normal. It's a really normal part of relationships. It shouldn't be something that we feel, oh my goodness, my marriage is an absolute breaking point. But I think if you do notice that those arguments are happening more frequently, and they're becoming particularly difficult for you, you feel you're bickering about things, what you can try and do is just make sure that you've got plenty of time out. We're very good at doing time out for our children, and when we need to, and actually having time out from your partner is really important as well. There's a lot about needing your own separate identities, your own separate worlds, and that's what work can be really, really helpful in creating. Whether you're people who naturally do work in close quarters to each other, but having different roles, different things going on for you during the day, maybe going out and getting some fresh air separately, maybe going and making sure you've got time for your hobbies, speaking to friends, making sure you've got some separation in your day from each other can be really, really key. So then you've got more to actually be able to spend time talking about, I suppose, actually kind of have your sort of separate identities as well. And I think, also, as I mentioned earlier, just making sure that you are talking about your feelings. If you're feeling scared and you're someone who's not comfortable with feeling scared and feeling vulnerable, say you're a real coper, you're someone who normally gets through life, you're absolutely doing things perfectly and everything's going well, and then suddenly you're faced with this and you're feeling really anxious, that can make you become a bit more angry, a bit more aggressive in your relationship, a bit more kind of having a go at your partner, because maybe you're dealing with your own uncomfortable feelings. And actually trying to talk to your partner about those uncomfortable feelings, say, actually, this is what's kind of going on for me, and can we talk about that, and trying to make some time maybe in the evenings when the children are asleep or something to actually have those discussions. That can be really important to make sure that you are keeping up those communication together, really. But it is tricky, and I think couples shouldn't put themselves under pressure to sort of have this perfect relationship. I think we're all learning, we're all just trying to work out the best way of doing things, and but making sure that you're trying to have some separate time, trying to also make sure you have some couple time as well, some time that's just yours in the evenings where you can actually talk about things important.
And do you have any advice for parents in particular, perhaps about like ways they can talk with their children if they're feeling anxious, or ways that you can perhaps, effectively share concerns about whether it's childcare or home education or anything like that? Could you give some advice to the parents watching?
Well, there's loads of really good resources. Schools are providing fantastic resources, and there's a lot of support coming through from the different parents' sort of social media groups and things like that. So I found so far actually there's a huge amount out there in terms of teaching resources, but I think what's maybe Sharon can expand on this as well. Actually what's really important above that really is actually the mental health side of things for children, actually making sure that children feel really contained, which is a sense of being their emotions being kind of looked after, anxieties being kind of thought about, and that parents to be able to sort of hear those anxieties rather than sort of shut them down, because children might be feeling, I haven't seen my friends, and what's going on, and what's this bug, and they don't really know. But actually there's a temptation, I think, for parents to be like, no, everything's fine. But actually that can be sort of unhelpful for children, because actually if they're worrying about something, they need to be able to talk about those worries. They need to be able to have those worries heard and focused on, I suppose, and then maybe reassurance and sort of, they can be thought about. But I think the temptation is to sort of be like, oh, no, it's all fine. But actually, I think really listening to your children can be really useful.
I think it's true what Elle says, they will know things, they will have picked up things, they will be aware of the general anxiety, and they'll be anxious too. And that may manifest itself in a whole host of different ways. It may be, some of their behaviour, or they're just upset, or, and it's giving them the space to say, actually, it's okay to be scared. this is scary, but we're going to do what we can, and these are the measures we're taking, and this is why we're doing it. And it's being honest and giving them enough information so that they can feel safe. And I think as well as what I was saying, there is a fantastic amount of resources out there, but it's, take the pressure off yourself. You don't have to be a perfect mother. You just have to be a good enough mother. And actually, reading, writing and maths might keep them distracted, but the things they need to know right now is that they're loved and they're safe. And any parent can do that. And that's all they need at the moment.
And actually talking about, well, not just mums, but mums, dads, everybody out there who is, maybe finding it quite tough. I was just wondering that, again, I've seen on social media people talking about self-care. And I just wondered if you had any tips, Sharon, on how you could do this effectively rather than just it being, a meme.
I mean, it's not prescriptive. That's the beauty of self-care. There isn't a magic formula that enables you to look after yourself. It is very much individual. But the one thing we all have at the moment is time. And it's striking that balance with the family. So it might be saying, look, we all need our space, as Elle was talking about earlier. Individual time is important as well as group or couple time. And it's saying, look, I need to have some space at this point to do this, whether it's go for a run or whether it's, just sit in a room with a book away from everybody else for a bit, or whatever it is, like pick up those hobbies that you have neglected over the years because you haven't had the time to do them. And it's doing the things you like and finding the space for them and negotiating that within the family so that everybody feels that they're getting their bit of space and time to do what they want, I think. But there isn't a magic bullet in the sense, but it's just acknowledging what you need. And if you need to be alone, or you need to be together, or you need a hug, it's asking for what you need from those around you, I think. And the wider community as well, because I think, although we're not allowed to meet each other, the way that the community, particularly Overton, has pulled together has been amazing. And it is, although we're all anxious, we are all anxious together. And so that's where the solidarity comes into it. And it's using resources that are around you, really.
Thanks ever so much, Sharon and Eleanor from Kingsclere Counselling Service. And obviously, if anybody does need some particular help, we will be putting their details below on the website and on the Facebook page for you. Thanks, guys.